Okay, shut up you guys. I want to talk about the Odyssey, just like everyone else. Is this a good shirt? I wore it because I thought it made me look like a little sailor, but maybe I have created a visual nightmare for my editing process. Oh well. This film is a 3-hour IMAX spectacular in which one of the most important directors of our time rounds up a significant portion of the best actors in the world to deliver his interpretation of a 1,000-year-old epic story and get to the bottom of what it's really about: the subtleties of hospitality and etiquette. First off, a little background about this film and my thoughts on it. I'm not an action girly, and I mostly wanted to see it to have an educated opinion. As you might be aware, when the trailer came out, it was review bombed by a bunch of bigots who were upset that black and trans people exist in a movie with cyclopses and witches. I think Elliot Page might be the most powerful person in the world. The guy just exists in a place and people's heart rates start spiking. They're foaming at the mouths. They look like Odysseus tied to the stern listening to the siren song, except instead of deadly mermaids, it's a 5-foot, 40-year-old man with better abs than you. And Lupita Nyong'o with her full 3 minutes of screen time. I don't have a lot to add about that hasn't already been said by smarter people than me, but we know that's straight up misogynoir, right? Like, no one seemed to care all that much that there were plenty of miscellaneous black and Asian soldiers. No one was crying about historical accuracy when they saw a diverse group of red shirts running around. But how dare they cast a dark-skinned black woman as the most beautiful woman in the world? It's not actually about how Greek she looks, it's about a non-European woman being seen as influential and desirable. And if that distracts you from enjoying this movie, I'm sorry, you're weak. I'm built different. I'm distracted because Spider-Man is being bullied by Batman. But anyway, I ended up really enjoying this movie. I found each episode of Odysseus's journey had a good sense of suspense, which could have been hard because it is a lot of guys going onto an island, followed by guys running away from the scary thing on that island. But I found myself physically tense every time they were running away from something new. I think the use of practical effects really helped. Like, a lot of these epic films feel like they have to use state-of-the-art CGI, but the result is it ages very quickly and sometimes doesn't look realistic at all. Whereas I think most of these visuals will hold up and remain timeless and real. I think Anne Hathaway's performance was fantastic, and Penelope's journey helped break up the episodic, action-y nature of Odysseus' journey. Robert Pattinson succeeded in being so slimy. Everyone in my cinema actually cheered when he and the other suitors got their comeuppance. Cons: as much as I was thoroughly engaged, I stand by the opinion I've always held, which is that there is no reason for a 3-hour movie to exist. One of the top Google searches for this film should not be, "when do I pee?" A lot of the scenes could have been tightened. For example, yes, I know it's technically the dramatic climax of a 10-year war, but also, in a very real way, it's a shot of a door being opened. Make it shorter. The giant Lestrygonians from the island of Aiaia, oh my god, someone stop buying vowels. On its own, a very cool sequence, especially when you find out that to make the proportions work, all of Odysseus's men in that scene were played by tiny women with amazing arms. But we also just came from them escaping the 20-foot Cyclops' island, so really your enemies are just getting progressively smaller. Could have skipped. Honestly, they should have let me into that editing room. I love trimming things down. Killing your darlings, as they say. Flinging them off the cliff like John Leguizamo did with those puppies. Kobe! But what is there to take away from this film that we didn't get from the original 24-book epic poem? I mean, besides the fact that, if we're being honest, no one has read the 24-book epic poem. Well, this movie isn't really about Cyclops and witches. Or it is, but these Cyclops and witches are a metaphor. A metaphor about how society creates rules to protect its most vulnerable members, and how those rules are then exploited by its most powerful members. Zeus's law is a phrase that's said about 100 times in this script. Again, if I'm in the editing chair, I'm cutting it down to a clean 50, but it's fine, it's important. It's a societal rule that dictates that you treat a stranger who comes into your house as an honored guest. Make sure they have food, warmth, anything they may need. Basically, do unto them as you would have them do unto you. The logic being, apart from just like being a nice thing to do, is that a stranger may be a god, perhaps Zeus himself in disguise. And these Greeks are not about to get Beauty and the Beasted by some lightning dude who lives in the big mountain. This law has become a huge pain in the ass for Penelope and Telemachus, Odysseus' wife and son, respectively, as they await his questionable return from the Trojan War. Because they have a house full of suitors vying for Penelope's hand who are taking full advantage of the fact that she is honor-bound to feed and house them for as long as she holds off choosing one of them to marry. This, of course, includes slimy bastard Robert Pattinson. How long has he been one of Penelope's suitors? A while. What is unsaid but obvious is that this was never the true purpose of Zeus's law. It was not meant to ensure that men that have every means to provide for themselves could make themselves at home wherever they pleased. It was meant to ensure that those in true need would be cared for. And the opposite is happening. As the suitors make merry in Penelope's homes, depleting her resources, they flagrantly shun and harass the hungry wanderers Telemachus, I can't get his name right. Telemachus, I just really have to think about the le before I say it. They flagrantly shun and harass the hungry wanderers Telemachus welcomes in, calling them names and even beating them. And I know I'm not the only one who was really uncomfortable with how hard Robert was hitting those hard R's in beggar and plate liquor. So these people really don't care about the sanctity of Zeus's law, only what it can help them get away with. I mean, even by the most literal interpretation of this law, if Zeus actually were going to go disguise himself to hang out with mortals, he probably wouldn't show up as some rich boy in shiny armor. He would show up as an unassuming beggar, or a really horny swan. One of the two. Meanwhile, Telemachus might be taking the whole thing a little too far. He keeps saying everyone has the wise eyes of Athena. Like, our boy Tom Holland is so down for his beautiful wifey. He's seeing her in the face of 50-year-old panhandlers. Either that or he's the kind of kid who was really into Percy Jackson, so he just thinks everyone's a demigod. And Penelope's journey, while outwardly one of loyalty, is actually one of rage. The rage of anyone who's ever been told to be tolerant of the intolerant, of any woman who knows the forcefulness that would help a man get ahead would be her undoing. Hell, of any minimum wage worker facing down a customer who knows they can berate the worker all they want and they can't do shit in retaliation. Now, this is a character with much more power than the average woman, but by the societal norms of the times, she has less power than any of these men, even within her own home. And in a just world, these rules of etiquette would exist to protect her, but while all these men would of course state their intention to protect and provide for her, they are more than willing to take advantage of the difficult position she's in. Meanwhile, that Odysseus is getting into some crazy shenanigans. He and his crew are sailing home after their glorious defeat of Troy, laughing down oh so manlily the inevitable waves of PTSD, and it's all taking just a tad longer than they thought it would. So they stop at an island and pillage it. And then they stop at another island and start following a sheep to a big flock living inside a cave. And what's on the walls of that cave? Cheese, and Odysseus starts munching. So far, relatable. Get off a boat, find a fluffy animal to bug, get excited about cheese. But when one of Odysseus's men tells him maybe he shouldn't be going at some stranger's food without permission, Odysseus cites, you guessed it, Zeus's law. And this is going to be the start of these men having a very complicated relationship with that rule. Because back on Ithaca, it's all pretty black and white. There are the powerful men who are abusing Zeus's law, and they're the people who are actually requiring protection who are getting screwed over. Odysseus' soldiers occupy a more gray area. They are a band of fierce warriors. They have a lot of both social and physical leverage wherever they go. But they are also progressively more and more desperate as their journey continues and their supplies dwindle. So they are both genuinely people in need and people who can exert their power over others. But these are wise men, experienced in the world. Surely they can manage to strike a balance that will allow them to get what they need while respecting those that must offer it. Nah, they're super rude about it every time. And granted, in this great cheese debacle, the owner of the sheep and cheese ends up being a 20-foot cyclops, so would they have been all that more likely to survive if they had showed a little more deference before chowing down on that cheddar? Maybe not, but maybe, just maybe, if they hadn't so confidently entered that cave like they owned it and just been a little more cognizant of being in a place where they don't belong, then they'd be in a better place to not get trapped in there. Sometimes it pays to have little social anxiety. But sometimes you're just in a Greek epic and people get eaten. Fine. Sometimes you gotta blind a cyclops and pretend to be sheep, and Miss Manners doesn't have that much to do with it. But then, when they've already escaped the cave, when they're running for the shore, these guys are so good at running at shores, Odysseus decides, you know what? Fuck you for eating half my crew. Even if we technically invaded your home, even if you're just evolutionarily designed to see humans as cake pops, fuck you. And he shoots him again, angering him even more. And the men are not about this. Obviously, it puts them all in more danger than they were already in. And then there's the tiny matter that this Cyclops might be the son of Poseidon, not a very good person to have mad at you during an ocean voyage. If only Telemachus had been there, he could have been like, ah, you have the wise eyes of Poseidon. The wise eye. But in addition to all that, it just feels icky. Technically, there's not some subsection of Zeus's law that goes into exactly how much violence is okay to exert on a homeowner if they're trying to crunch on your head like an ice cube, but it's very clear that in that moment, Odysseus has stepped over the line between self-defense and rage-induced cruelty. It also doesn't help that, as the internet has agreed, the Cyclops is kind of baby. Like, he is very terrifying as he's skulking around in the shadows, reaching out his long limbs to grab ya. But he's also just kind of sad looking. Like, the expression he has as he lumbers into his cave and starts munching on these soldiers, very much the long, vacant look I have after a 10-hour shift as I'm eating chips and queso over the sink. But anyway, this is where bad luck becomes cursed fate for Odysseus' guys. The god of the sea is against them, every step seems to be the wrong one, and every island they land on to refuel and regroup has them losing numbers and hope. They meet a really shitty kid and his 100 of muscly uncles over at IDIA. Then they hop over to an island where they immediately break into a cottage and accost an older woman. And this is where I'm like, guys, I get that you're in desperate straits here, but a little bit of subtlety, a little bit of just looking at the optics here. You are a big old gang of soldiers forcing your way into a strange woman's home, grabbing her, and demanding food. At this point, they're incredibly reminiscent of the suitors. They're perhaps even worse because Penelope at least has a bit of social status to protect her, whereas this woman has nothing, except the ability to turn them into pigs, it turns out. But Odysseus manages to get her to turn them back, and unlike in a lot of interpretations where he gets on her good side mostly due to her being real thirsty, here he is able to reason with her, in part because he just does the bare minimum in terms of being a respectful guest. He waits to be invited in, he is not greedy, he is not threatening. I mean, he does threaten her bird sister like a little bit, but again, sometimes you're just in a Greek myth and you have to act accordingly. It's the perfect illustration of how the men in this society are behaving under the shield of Zeus's law versus what it should actually look like. Anyway, then Circe tells them to literally go to hell. So they do. Not a lot of great vibes down there. Sinon, Elliot Page's character, is not very happy with Odysseus for lying to him about the whole wooden horse situation. I haven't even really touched on him and his drama with Robert Pattinson, as juicy as it is. I just don't know how much it relates to what I'm talking about. But yeah, he's essentially like, if I was gonna die for this whole operation, I should have at least gotten to be in on the big reveal. And honestly, gee. Then some more dead people tell Odysseus that all his men are doomed to die and only he'll get home. They give him a handy play-by-play, and he's like, well, if we avoid all these things, will they live? And the ghosts are like, theoretically, but you won't. And then they chase him back to the shore, because that's how all these interactions end. In the end, Odysseus is able to steer them through some of the obstacles he was warned about with minimal casualties, but then they reach the island where the cattle of the sun god lived, and Odysseus has been told if they slay and eat the cattle, his men will die. By the way, the sun god is Helios. I don't know why we're not using his name. I don't know if someone stole the copyright from the ancient Greeks, but he's the sun god. And at first the men listen and resist, but they have no food, the wind will not take them from the island, so finally they decide to cook up some hamburgers before they starve. And this is really interesting because it's the one time they are not able to lean on Zeus's law, the one time they're told, you cannot have what is mine, and it's when they need it the most. Is it because they have taken others' generosity or helplessness for granted so many times that now they're being punished with this cruel irony? Or is it that while the gods demand this selflessness from lesser mortals, they feel no need to uphold it themselves? They are just people even farther up the ladder, taking what they can and leaving nothing behind. So the men die. At this point, they're almost like, yeah, we fucking know, we ate the cows, Poseidon's gonna drown us. And then Odysseus has a tiny 7-year vacation with Calypso where some flowers make him forget his ride-or-die wifey. But finally, he gets back home. He disguises himself as a beggar, sees how horribly the suitors are treating his wife, son, and all those they should be helping and protecting, and decides to go full beast mode. But first, time for some introspection. You see, all this time, Odysseus has been plagued by visions of Athena, mostly telling him what an idiot he is. We've also seen some flashbacks from the final battle of Troy, 5-minute shot of a door opening, that stuff. But as he's debriefing with Penelope in disguise, we see it in a light we hadn't seen before. The brutality, the deception, the sneaking into this city, this home, and coming not just for the soldiers and commanders, but the people. And we see Odysseus' men slaughter a woman who looks an awful lot like Athena, just as they take down Athena's statue. Now, who was this woman? A random citizen of Troy, a priestess of Athena perhaps, with whose face Odysseus now endows the goddess of wisdom and war? Or was she not an actual human, but a personification of Athena and the gods, whose death signifies their values being destroyed in this battle? It doesn't really matter. She is Odysseus' guilt for breaking, if not the letter, then the spirit of Zeus's law in a heinous way. And he can make excuses for it. They were at war, the Trojans would have done the same thing, etc., but that does not wash the blood off his hands. So he decides to take this humble lesson and for once do the right thing, which is kill more people. And I'm not being facetious here. By the letter of Zeus's law, killing all the suitors who have taken advantage of everyone else's goodwill and or powerlessness for 3 years is the wrong thing to do. But Odysseus has now seen the complexities around this law, and he knows taking out those who abuse it is the right thing. Plus, they kicked his dog. So, after a wild action sequence, all the suitors have either died or submitted, because he does let them submit if they want. I mean, maybe not the first guy with the arrow through the mouth, but all the others. Anyway, Odysseus is exiled, but he's fine with it. I personally would not be getting on another boat after all that, but it was always Penelope's dream to sail off into the sunset, and after her rigmarole, Mama deserves a cruise. So what do we, a modern audience, take away from the Odyssey's exploration of Zeus's law? It could be a metaphor for a great many things. Humanity abusing our relationship with the environment, the rich taking advantage of government handouts while services for lower income individuals are slashed, people who come to the potluck with a bag of Lay's and eat all the good samosas. But I don't think we have to narrow it down or point fingers. I think we can all just consider when in our lives we are taking advantage of others' generosity or flexing our power to get what we want, and when we can stand up to bullies and protect those who really need it. And be nice to this baby boy. But what did you think? Did you like this film? What guidelines for hosting did you take away? When did you pee? If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and as always, have a delicious day. And don't get turned into a pig. Don't get turned into a pig. Don't get turned into a pig. Don't get turned into a pig.